Thank you. So, hello. Yeah. So I'm really happy to be in Iowa. I've had the opportunity to speak in this general vicinity several times in the last 3 to 4 years, and it feels like Maine in a lot of ways to me. Starting with, in Maine, we're huge basketball fans. Our family is a huge basketball family. So I know all about Northern Iowa's historically great hoops teams, Iowa's hoops teams. We love Caitlin Clark. High school basketball is huge in Maine. I suspect it's really big here as well. The culture of this state reminds me of the culture of Maine. All you'd have to do is swap out corn for pine trees, and it's the same state. I mentioned one of our businesses is that we own timberland and we grow trees. Do you have any idea, or might you venture a guess, as to how long it takes to grow an eastern white pine tree in Maine? Good guess. It takes 80 to 100 years. So think about this. It makes no sense. We've been in business since 1848, and we've had 2 crops. I mean, it literally makes 0 sense. We pay foresters to go out and check on seedlings this tall, so that maybe 80 to 100 years from now, it would be a mature, harvestable resource. So you couldn't be in the business of growing pine trees without taking a long view. I'm really grateful to be with you. My personal mission has become trying to use the place of work as a leading platform to heal a hurting world. When I think about how humanity advances at the adult level, I believe the single best platform for its advancement is the place of work. And I've become really focused on making work meaningful, making it generative, energy-giving, life force building for the people who do it. But you think about work today, and there are a lot of perceptions around it. I was with a good friend of mine recently who owns a lumber company in Kentucky. We were walking through his yard. He was smoking a cigarette. He's a distinguished Southern gentleman. And I asked the innocent question, how many people work for you? And without breaking stride, he said, oh, about half of them. I gave a talk similar to this to a pretty big manufacturing company in Maine recently. All of the frontline manufacturing team was there, and I talked about the power and potential of making it safe at work for everyone to speak with their own true voice. And one of the factory workers waited when I was done to talk to me, and he said, Kevin, you know, I love that idea, but I've got to tell you, the last time I said what I thought around here, I got sent home for a week. I was with another business owner, a friend of mine, recently, if you heard this line before, who said to me, nobody wants to work anymore. Have you heard that line, or is it just me? And we are friends, so I could do this. So he said that. I paused. I hugged him. And I said, maybe. And maybe it's just that nobody wants to work for you anymore. In 2013, I stood up in a room just like this outside of Portland, Maine. The room was filled with our biggest customers. This was a room filled with the top contractors, professional builders in Maine. And I took a deep breath. I knew what I was about to say. I'd never said it out loud before, certainly not to customers. And I was so nervous, the sweat was running down my back before I said it. I said to the room full of our biggest customers, you know that old saying, the customer comes first? Well, I don't actually believe that's true anymore. Our entire sales team was in the back of the room hearing this for the first time, and I had their attention. They were like, okay, where is he going with this? Here's where I went with it. This is what I went on to say. I've come to believe that the people who are going to take care of the customer should come first. And if a company were able to provide a consistently world-class energy-giving work experience, that those employees would then take world-class care of the customer, and that would produce a world-class outcome for the company. By focusing first not on the company, not on the customer, but on the people that are going to do the work. So today, to use a piece of Maine slang, what I like to say is at Hancock Lumber, the customer comes a wicked close second. We are really into our customers. They're a big deal to us. We listen, we hustle, we work, we love them, we appreciate them, we don't take them for granted, but they do not come first. At Hancock Lumber, the people who work at the company are our first focus, and the mission is to make their work meaningful. We aspire to put the flywheel of success for our organization in motion at the point of the employee experience. So let's step back and talk for a minute about how work is going in America for the people who do it. I also call this what Gallup knows. You know Gallup, the polling agency. They just came out a couple months ago with their 2024 Global Workplace Survey. And here's what Gallup knows. In America, 165 million people work, and only 33% of them will describe it as meaningful. For 66%, it's just an economic exercise. Globally, the data gets worse. Globally, 3.5 billion people work, and only 22% of them will say they find it meaningful or engaging. This month in America, 3.3 million people are going to quit. I'm not talking retire, I'm not talking transfer, I'm talking quit. In December, 3.3 million Americans are going to quit. In January, 3.3 million Americans are going to quit. In February, 3.3 million Americans are going to quit. In Gallup's survey, 49% of all U.S. workers reported experiencing a, quote, high degree of stress at work yesterday. 47% of all U.S. workers described their personal holistic life experience as either struggling or suffering. So Gallup tries to estimate the economic cost of this significant human disengagement at work. And they put a big number on it. I think it's 8 or 9 trillion. And I don't mean to diminish the economic number, but what has me is what's the human cost? The soulful, spiritual, human cost of meaningless work. I estimate a career at 70,000 hours. What's the human cost of 70,000 hours of meaningless work? And I've become convinced that it's not okay, it's not sustainable, it's not optimal, and it ain't necessary. The simplest thing I've learned, or believe I've learned, about business leadership is that companies and their leaders get whatever they consistently prioritize. So if we aren't getting meaningful work, it's only because we aren't making it a meaningful priority. That little formula is one of my favorites. What we see determines what we do, and what we do determines what we get. So if we want to get anything different in our lives, we first got to start with a new thought. We first got to learn to see the world, and in this case, the world of work, differently in some particular way. It starts with us. So I want to share with you today how I came to acquire my new C about making work meaningful for the people who do it. And it triggers around 2 dates, 2010 and 2012. In 2010, at the peak of the national housing and mortgage market collapse, does anyone other than me remember that period? Very stressful in a lot of industries, and particularly anything to do with housing and construction, like lumber. In a span of 36 months, from 2007 to 2010, our sales fell by 50% without losing a customer. The market just got that much smaller that quickly. And there I was, the 6th generation CEO of this company that went back to 1848, and suddenly everything was in the balance. At the peak of that collapse, I began to have trouble speaking. Something I'd always taken for granted and always done a lot of. When I went to talk, all the muscles in my throat would spasm and squeeze and contract. It felt like someone was putting a seatbelt around my throat and pulling it tight every time I tried to say something. And suddenly pushing out a few short words had become a major athletic feat. At the time, the odds of me being here today talking were literally zero. This gentleman and I could have been sitting here and he would have had trouble hearing me. Turned out I'd acquired spasmodic dysphonia. Have you ever heard of spasmodic dysphonia? I hadn't. It's a rare neurological voice disorder that affects only speech with no known cause and no known cure. Side story, without medicine, I essentially cured it. My voice is funky, but I can go anywhere I want, say anything I want to say, and everybody can hear me. But back then, I could barely talk, and our company's reeling. So I'm trying to figure out how to help get our company through the collapse of the housing market without the consistent use of my voice. And no mentor or guide or framework for how to deal with this. When it's hard to talk, you quickly develop strategies for doing less of it. And mine at work was to answer a question with a question, thereby putting the responsibility for speaking right back on the other person. So someone would come up to me at work in this age-old scene with a question or a problem, because I was the CEO, the owner, the boss. Prior to my voice condition, what would I have done? I would have given an answer, a directive, an instruction. But now, because of my voice, and only to protect my voice, I wasn't thinking about leadership at the time, I started saying something like this. Gee, that's a good question. What do you think we should do about it? He or she would tell me what he or she thought, and then I would take a second deep breath and say, okay, that sounds good, let's do that. And off he or she would go with his or her solution to the problem that he or she saw. Now, I was a little slow on the uptake, but after hundreds of exchanges like that, something transformative struck me. People already knew what to do. They already knew what to do. They knew more about their part of the company than I did. They understood it better. And they already knew what to do. So why were they asking? Why were they asking? They didn't actually ever need a directive on high from me. What they really needed was the work culture, safety to trust and follow their own voice. 2012, not too far from here, I began somewhat serendipitously traveling to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the southwest corner of South Dakota, a place I've now been over 30 times. Do you know where the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation is? It sits right below Rapid City, a couple hours below Rapid, right on top of the Nebraska Panhandle. It's the biggest, most historic, most traditionally combative, angry, disenfranchised, and today poorest of all the Sioux reservations on the northern plains. It was once home, their tribe, the Oglala Sioux, is home to some of the most famous medicine men and war leaders in Sioux history, names like Crazy Horse, Red Cloud, Black Elk, and others. And I've had people there describe their community's modern journey through American history as from first to worst. Today, statistically, it's the poorest place in America. If you Google median income by county, the two poorest counties in America are the two that make up the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. We had a national crisis when the mortgage markets collapsed economically, when unemployment hit 10%. On the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation today, as we speak, it's 80%. Median income's less than $10,000. Lowest life expectancies in North America are in Haiti. Second is the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And I went once, and I went back, and I went back, and I was there this summer for the 30th time. And I have lots of friends there. Here's the connection to this story. At Pine Ridge, I met an entire community that felt as if a piece of their authentic voice had been taken or stolen. A community that didn't feel authentically heard. The two experiences, my own voice condition and my time at Pine Ridge, gave me a new C in 5 transformational ways. First, from spasmodic dysphonia, I actually now knew, for the first time in my otherwise pretty privileged life, what it was like to not feel heard, because I often, for years, couldn't say what I actually wanted to say. Literally couldn't do it. So in the most unexpected of ways, I knew what it felt like. Second, at Pine Ridge, it struck me that there are lots of ways for humans to lose a piece of their authentic voice in this world. Third, at a lumber company in Maine, that got me thinking about the very meaning or purpose of a human life on Earth. That alluring yet unanswerable question. And I concluded in this context that perhaps it's to self-actualize. That maybe the one thing all humans have in common is we're just here doing the best we can on a planet where life eats life and everything dies, to find our own true voice, our own true, authentic, never to be repeated voice. There will never, ever be another you. Maybe the meaning of a life on earth is self-actualization. So then I said, if the purpose of a human life on earth is self-actualization, what impact historically has leadership had on helping those within a human organization self-actualize? And I concluded that while humanity's had some progressive, amazing, and inspirational leaders, that on average, in total, leadership as we know it had done more to limit, restrict, direct, coach, manage, exploit, utilize the voices of others than to liberate them. And that's when the 5th realization hit me that transformed the way I thought about leading and managing. My voice condition that I previously only ever thought of as a hindrance or a liability or quite literally a pain in the neck, maybe it was actually a gift and a blessing and an invitation to lead differently. In what kind of way? In a way that gave other people a stronger voice. And because I had the good fortune of, at that time, owning and managing a company, I had the opportunity to not just contemplate this in a corner office, I had the opportunity to actually try it. And our company, for 12 uninterrupted years, has been in full pursuit of using the place of work to give others voice. That modern leadership maybe is about dispersing power, not collecting it. So let me tell you how we pursued that mission. Here's what I found. It was surprisingly simple to pursue this. We made 4 changes within our business. I'll tell you those 4 changes, and then I'll share with you 4 outcomes that resulted from those changes. Change number 1, I, the senior leader, was going to become someone different. I was going to change. And this was so liberating. I get giddy when I talk about it. Prior to my voice condition, I thought leadership was worrying about what everybody else was doing. And that was hard, and it didn't ever work very well. Post-voice condition, I entered a new space where leadership was mostly going to be about what I was doing, that I was going to become something different. I was going to redirect my ego. I was going to give others voice. I was going to look inward. I've thought a lot about how humanity changes, and I've concluded it changes this way: within, beside, and beyond. Within us, we become something different. When we become something different, the people right beside us experience us differently. They literally have a changed experience. And when they have a changed experience, that ripples beyond work even, to their family, their home, their community, and their life. So number 1, I was going to focus on becoming the change I wanted to see. Number 2, we got detailed and we rewrote our mission and reprioritized our metrics. So the mission was going to be to make work meaningful. As defined by who? As defined by them, not me. So the metric was going to be engagement. And as you probably know, engagement is highly measurable. There are companies all over America through surveys that can measure it. We began participating in the Best Places to Work survey that every employee took every year, and it produces an engagement score. And we said to our entire leadership team, this is our new top metric. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling too busy, if you're feeling bogged down with data, just focus on this. If we drive this, it'll drive everything else. So we changed the mission and we changed the metric to support the mission. Third, we recalibrated listening. We rethought who we were listening to and why we were listening to them. So we reoriented to spend more time listening to the employees, created structure and systems around how we were going to make sure we consistently listened to them, and then we repositioned why we were listening. And this was the breakthrough for us. Listening was going to be for understanding, not judgment. In a Hancock lumber huddle today, when a team member says what they think, my most common response today is thanks for sharing that. And when everyone in the organization hears thousands of times over, thanks for sharing that, what happens? They say what they think. When they say what they think, what happens? We get what I call the answers to the test, because they know. Why do they know? Because they live in the value stream every minute of every day. So they're telling us exactly where we can make the company better. And then here was the 4th change. This sounds too simple to be powerful. We decided we were going to stick to it, which was not my nature before my voice condition. It would be, what's the new big cool idea of the year or the quarter or the 3-year plan? And I said to everybody 12 years ago, this is the only mission we are ever going to pursue again as long as I'm alive. I pushed every chip to the center. My anthem is Dido's, I will go down with this ship. This is what we're doing. We're going to give voice to employees. We're going to make work meaningful. We're going to disperse power, and we're going to stick to it. What came out of that? A lot, but I'll give you 4 things. Companies get whatever they consistently prioritize. There's nothing magical about what we did other than prioritize this. So 11 years in a row now, we've been a best place to work in Maine. When we take our annual survey across 700 employee groups on 16 sites in 2 states, 95% of them participate. And our average engagement score in any year will run anywhere from 86 to 90, compared to a national average of 33%. So you can think about this any way you want to. Just think about the business advantage of having engaged teams at a rate of 2.5 times the industry or national average. Put an economic value on that. Second thing that came out of it, I didn't see this coming, but in hindsight it makes so much sense. We started making better decisions. Have you ever made a questionable or poor decision across your career? I've made a pile of them. So I know the cost of them. I know the cost of unwinding them, of recalibrating. And suddenly for us, when we slowed down to make sure everybody was heard, we started making better decisions. And we started getting deeper alignment. People were much more committed to what we decided to do because they felt like they had a stake in it. Third thing we found, and I hear it time and time again in focus groups and huddles today with our employees, is that work for almost all of them, they will now define as energy giving. I didn't even think this was possible. The old story is what? Oh, work is so draining. I need my whole evening, weekend, vacation just to recover to do it again Monday. And in huddle after huddle, people at our company will say, I go home at night charged up. That work has become energy giving. And in addition, we're just plain working less. The hours went down, the pay went up, and the energy was being given, not taken. And then finally, the last thing I'll add is our company ended up soaring financially. I'll share this with you among friends just for the ideas themselves. We ended up making more money from 2012 to 2020 than we made from 1848 to 2011. And it's not like we were slouches, like we'd been good enough to figure out how to get from 1848 to 2011. And our performance took off on the wings of thriving humans at work. So I've thought a lot about why. In 2017, spring of 2017, I drove from my home in Maine to the dilapidated Dunkin' Donut Center in Providence, Rhode Island, to watch the last ever performance of the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. I thought it was a highly underreported historic moment. The greatest show on earth for a century and a half was closing. The Dunkin' Donut Center was sold out. Half the audience, I would say, was former Ringling employees from around the world, all languages, as you can picture, and they were there to see this last show. I've come to call it the night the tiger trainer cried, which he did. At that show, there were no elephants. The star of the circus was there no longer. They'd been pulled about a year earlier regardless of how any of us might feel about this, over mounting concern over their individual experience. What was it like to be a circus elephant in a circus? What was that symbolic of? The well-being of 7 pachyderms, not even humans, but 7 pachyderms, had trumped the well-being of an entire iconic industry. And for me, it was a sign of the times we're living in. I believe across our lifetimes, we're living in a massive transitionary era from essentially the empire comes first to the individual comes first. That society has long been organized to be empire-centric. Across cultures, people have been indoctrinated into the art of giving themselves away for the good of the whole. And of course, don't get me wrong, self-sacrifice, commitment, teams, all of those things are essential to being human. But something else is unfolding before our eyes, which is a power shift towards the individual matters. And if you look around, you can see it everywhere. Think about the internet. Think about Google. These are massive power dispersing tools. Think about mobility. In the 18th century, if you were to travel to the land of the Sioux on the northern plains from my home in Maine, it would have taken a year. Like your family would have had a different configuration by the time you got there. Today, I leave after breakfast and I have lunch there. Think about power itself, solar panels, wind. That itself is being dispersed. Think about remote work. That's power dispersal. Think about NCAA image and likeness. That's power dispersal. Everywhere it's unfolding. And if we see that and get out in front of it and lead with it, our organizations can advance humanity and dramatically improve our own ability to perform. Every time I leave the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, I typically go west into Wyoming. And when I hit, one thing I love about that part of the country, when I hit the South Dakota-Wyoming border, I stop in the road, put my car in park, don't turn it off, leave the door open and get out and walk around. Because there are no other cars coming and there's not another human in sight. And I'm looking at the picture, Welcome to Wyoming, of the cowboy on the bucking bronco in front of the Tetons. And I say to myself, is this border real? Is this actually a real border, and for what purpose? I think about this idea is what I now have come to call what the Sioux and the scientists know. The Sioux, their organizing principle is mitakie oyasin, which means all things are one thing. Separateness, as we perceive it, as an illusion. The leading scientists today call it the field, which is the scientific knowledge that there's a single source of energy and it manifests in everything. Separateness, as we perceive it, is an illusion. In a world where separateness is an illusion, winning's got to be recalibrated. If everything's connected, winning isn't winning unless everybody's winning. And everybody gets to define whether or not they're winning. The problem with the old model is too many losers. And I'm not just talking economically, I'm talking voice, spirit. To the left of me there is my dear friend Catherine Grayday. To the right is my dear friend Verola Spider. We're in Verola's house. When it rains in her house, it doesn't leak, it rains in her house. They use big garbage cans to collect the rain in the house. Not anymore, because I helped her fix her roof. But Catherine said to me one day, what's on the screen there, it's just about being worn down, generation after generation. The cavalry, the missionaries, the boarding schools. You wake up one day and it's all been internalized. When you've been oppressed over generations, it takes hold. It takes hold within you. Once it takes hold within you, it's perpetuated from within, and we act out the oppression on ourselves. That's how deeply it's been ingrained. I was walking in the Arizona desert a number of years ago, contemplating all of this, looking for an organizing concept, alone at sunset. When it came to me, these 5 words plopped into my head. In nature, power is dispersed. And I said, oh my goodness, that's it. And then I panicked, because I didn't have my phone with me, I didn't have a pen with me, and I was a long way from my car, and I have a terrible memory. So I've been in pursuit of this organizing concept for a half a decade, and I was sure I was going to forget it before I got back to the car. So I kept saying over and over again, in nature, power is dispersed. And I stopped and looked at that landscape and had a conversation with it. This literally happened, me and this landscape. I said to that landscape, I said, where's your headquarters? Where's the Capitol? Where's the home office? Where's the CEO? Where are all the managers and supervisors? How's this place running so well? I turned to a stand of cactus and I said, which one of you is in charge of all the others? And the answer every time for me was inescapably clear. The secret sauce of nature, its power, is scattered and diffused. It lives in all its voices, big and small. And this is obvious today, but it hasn't always been so. Humans are part of nature, not above it, not separate from it, not isolated from it. We are a manifestation of it. And we ultimately aspire to reorganize in this same way. I can wrap up all of this in the form of a single question that summarizes what I'm in pursuit of. And it's this: what if everybody on earth felt trusted, respected, valued, and heard? What might change? Just pretend. That sounds like a tall task, but just pretend. All 8 billion people felt trusted, respected, valued, and heard. What might change? I'm convinced everything would change. Everything would change. And where might that change occur? Well, at the adult level, it ought to occur where adults hang out. And in this country, 165 million of them hang out at work. And work, to me, is the most logical platform for giving humans back their voice, for dispersing power, for helping them self-actualize. I cannot watch an election process like the one I just watched and not think that the world of capitalism is humanity's best hope. And we've only got to recalibrate it slightly, because everybody in this room already loves the people on their teams. And family businesses, nobody does this better, this caring part. So I'm not talking about a massive pivot here. But I've seen firsthand through a set of experiences that I never could have seen coming the transformative power of using the top leadership positions to disperse power, not collect it, to give voices to others. And when that voice is given, the company gets sharper. This is not a 60s commune outside of San Francisco that I'm talking about. We're highly disciplined. We're committed to best practices. We're extremely competitive. We want to grow, win customers, and compete. And we're going to do it by helping others come into their voice. So the profitability becomes a really exceptionally cool outcome of a higher calling, which is using the place of work to advance humanity. My favorite thing, I'll end this way, my favorite thing about the Sioux war chiefs and council when they were signing all their treaties in the second half of the 19th century, if you look at the translations, pretty much every speech ends this way. When the chief was done, he would end this way. He would say, and I quote, "And that is all I have to say about that." And that's all I have to say about this. I'm really honored to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. You have an amazing group. The energy in this room is incredible. It's filled with amazing voices, and you do so much to advance humanity. And the more we do that, the better our businesses can perform. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
It's up to you. I don't know what you have time for.
Yeah. Does anybody have questions? We have a couple minutes here for Kevin. Right here, yes.
I do have one question. How did you start getting involved with the Indian reservation?
It was following my own voice. So when I had my voice disorder, it really got me looking inward, and it got me re-examining who I was separate from the historic expected roles I thought my family and community needed and wanted me to play. I had seen my identity only through my performance as the CEO of the family business. And when the business got sick in the housing and mortgage market collapse, I literally got sick. I couldn't distinguish a wound to the company from a wound to myself. That's how much I'd lost my own voice. And so as I was awakening, I was like, I do love my role. I love being a CEO, and I want to be good at it. But that's not me. That's a role I play. So I was starting to follow my own voice, and I'd always had this love affair with the American West, hunting, hiking, fishing, history, and I particularly had been fascinated with the second half of the 19th century when America's manifest destiny pushed west from places like Council Bluff onto the plains to get to the other side and collided with the Plains tribes. And in August of 2012, so I was willing to do things I'd never been willing to do before, which was just follow my voice. So in August of 2012, I picked up a copy of National Geographic, and the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation was the cover story. And I read it, and I was swept away. I was sitting on a plane, and I said to my wife, Allison, I'm going to go there. I want to see what life is like for the people who live there. This is so funny. She was reading her own magazine. She never looked up. I don't think she really heard me. And she tapped me on the knee and said, nice, honey, you should do that. It's like one of the most transformative moments in my life. And so I went back, and I saw what was happening when I filled my own cup more. Like I was becoming a better leader by building a bigger life beyond just my role. It transformed me. And then I was so thankful, I was like, well, I can't just want that for me. Like, I want that for them. And maybe I can't give it to all 165 million American workers, but maybe I can help give it to 700. So it was following my voice that brought me there.
You pivoted with
Yeah, those are such important questions. Thank you for asking those. You know, my big point with this talk is, of course, not that you need to acquire a rare voice disorder and take off for a remote Indian reservation and go in pursuit of this. My big point to this question is what lights you up about what you really want to do with your platform that is your family business. And so for me, I could see it. I could see what I wanted to do. Now, and I made it clear we were pivoting. And the first thing that happened was nothing. Everybody watched. Right? I was like 44 at the time, and I've since said I had one of the best midlife crises I've ever seen. Like, it all became really productive stuff. But at first, nothing happened. And I would say today, I tell companies that you would probably have to commit hard to this for, say, 36 months before anything meaningfully, sustainably different materialized. We had to stick with it. The process was simply this. I changed. The people reporting directly to me began to have a different experience, a better one. And I then invited them to give that kind of better experience to the people that reported to them. It literally was a pass it on, trickle out and down invitation. So at first it was an invitation. After a period of years, it became an expectation. This is what we're doing. And if you don't want to do this, it doesn't make you're still amazing. But this is what we're doing. And so it self-selected itself. And then eventually, in years, it ripples right to the front line. And I walk around today and watch frontline employees sustain this, drive it, give it life. And this is critical. We talk about this work culture experience as a responsibility, not a right. You have to give it to get it. So when you join this company, you have to give voice to others. You have to give meaning to others. You have to help others feel heard. You have to engage in this. And if you give it, you will get it. So it took years, and I was just so all in. It didn't even, I was like, whatever happens, this is what we're doing. And it really helped me see the power of a singular focus that was going to drive and define our culture. Great question.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say one quick thing? I just want to say, sorry, I'm leaving now because I have to, I'm going to Phoenix next, and there's one flight today to Phoenix from Des Moines, and I'm going to be on that plane. But if anyone wants to follow up, I'd love to hear from you, and they know how to find me, and it would be a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you.